Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Carole Murko is a master of change. Her path from Wall Street analyst to NPR and PBS cooking host, and now to a mindset expert and health and self-mastery coach, is what drives her passion to help others make changes in their own lives and enable them to master their own thoughts and become the best version of themselves. Well, Carole, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's great to see you again.
It's fabulous to see you again, too. It's just always a pleasure to aligned and like-minded individuals such as yourself.
I'm glad you think so. I was hoping you could start us off today by telling us a little bit about how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Well, I'm going to start with what I've called my company, which is called Love, Eat, Heal. I believe that is kind of the best door into understanding kind of how I came to this work. And I chose those words very consciously. And the love part is love yourself first. And that was my, through my own journey of really leaning into loving myself first, understanding that self-care was actually something that was really good for me, and therefore I showed up as a better person. And that's just like a tiny window to the love part. The next part is the eat part. And I've been really big proponent of conscious eating and just being conscious in general about what we consume. And that includes even information. And because I believe that ultimately we digest the universe, like everything that's around us. And then heal is, I believe everybody has something to heal. Like heal what needs to be healed. And it could be something, as simple as just a little teeny wound that you carry from, an interaction that you had on the playground as a 5-year-old that you haven't, it created a behavior that is, that you were unconscious of to, disease and other things like that. So what brought me to creating that was cast into my own healing journey. So I had an autoimmune eye disease that had no known cure. And I took on to exploring when what I deemed Western medicine was failing me because it was an orphan disease, as they call them, that it was so rare that there's not a lot of research. And so when you're showing up and they're just giving you different drugs and they're like, well, let's try this, let's try that. You failed that one. And then one day I was meditating, and which was one of the tools that I had explored to help me through this process of getting, a diagnosis that, in the Western medicine paradigm had a really bad result. And I trying to find tools that would help me heal myself. And I started meditating, and I was on the beach and I was doing a walking meditation, and I just had a really unpleasant conversation with my doctor. And it just was like, I had this somewhat of a download that just said, you can heal yourself. Like you have the power within you. And that's when I really started understanding my thoughts were going to heal me, that I was going to align my intention of being whole and healed and the emotion that I would feel when I was healed. And so that emotion is, freedom and wholeness. I just didn't learn this out of thin air. Like I sort of tripped into healers. Like I think once you put out into the universe that you're ready, right? You're ready to heal, the teachers show up. And so the first teacher that showed up for me, it was really sort of more like sledgehammered over my head because it was introduced to this person, not literally, but just his work 3 times over the course of 9 months. And after the third time, it was like, I apparently need to know this work. And that was the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I dove in full in, and I ultimately have got certified to teach a program called Change Your Mind, Create New Results. And my perspective on all this is you teach what you need to learn. And so I'm teaching what I deeply need to learn, and through the process of helping others on their healing journeys or even healing myself more deeply. So that's kind of how I got in, and I'm passionate about it because I'm a walking example of the work, because I can see all my symptoms have gone and I just have magic in my life. I don't even know how to explain it better. And I don't have to push the way I used to, right? Just the work works in every aspect of your life. It's not just like, oh, it'll help you heal. It'll help you like show up better. It'll help you be a better partner. It's just magic.
Well, and so what are the pieces or factors in that magic? We've talked about a variety of things in our pre-interview talk. What kinds of tools do you use on an ongoing basis or incorporate into the work you do with others, teaching them to change their thoughts to heal their lives?
Yeah, well, it starts as simply as understanding that our thoughts basically create things, and that there's a formula or a model that we first start with when I work with my clients, is that if you believe your thoughts have anything to do with your destiny, and they do, and we have 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are the same thoughts you had yesterday, then it makes sense that, we're kind of repeating our life day after day after day. So once I like lay out that framework, then I begin to show them, myself, like, what are those thoughts that you come with every day with? So like, and we journal. So journaling is a big part. So you wake up in the morning, and typically before I was doing this work, I would start thinking about my problems, right? Because I think or my to-do list, or in that process, naturally, without me knowing it, put me into a state of stress, right? Which is not the place that we want to be. It creates disharmony in our bodies and we're not creative. It's a maladaptive state of being that, once a long time ago, we went into stress or survival because we were living in the woods and maybe there was a bear that we were running away from, and that we would just kind of go into this process where we would, be focused on, run, fight, or hide. But that's the state of being that most people live in modern day. I think the statistic is something about 70% of us live thoughts that create hormones of stress. So once you start making the unconscious conscious, right? So many of the things that I was unconscious, I would wake up and I would think about these things. And I'd say 90% of my clients have this, they don't have the same thoughts as I do, but they have the same experience that, wow, yeah, I do wake up and think like, oh, the weather's gross outside. And immediately not even understanding that even that simple thought about bad weather is, change as a negative thought, right? And that then is, feeding a more, negative energetic around their words, and then the stress hormones in their bodies. So we start there and we list out everything that's awesome about yourself, right? Like that, like you would absolutely not want to change, because we all are awesome, right? We all have amazing things that we absolutely want to take with us when we're in this process. But then we look at the things that we don't want to take with us. It could be anything from like self-judgment or complaining or any of those types of things. And I think a lot of people know how to identify those things, but what I teach them to do is like, what do you want to replace them with? That's your target, right? And so if you want to replace anger, or say, I'm just thinking of emotion that a lot of people would feel, like
Anger's a good one.
unworthiness. Okay,
Well,
anger, yeah.
yeah, the thought of unworthiness or anger's a good
Yeah.
one, especially in
Yeah.
this culture.
Yeah. And so, and I usually say, what would be a better alternative to anger? Like, what's that replacement? And, of course, it's obviously not being angry, but it's also like, being loving, right? It's being kind. And so then I coach them through that process of, okay, so if you no longer want to have anger about certain things, and you want to replace it with kindness and love, then every time you feel anger, like you've got to imagine that you're replacing it with love and kindness. And that gives them a target, right? It's like the GPS. And then I teach them what happens in your brain, as you well know, that, we can prune synaptic connections and then we could create new ones. And so we're trying to like be aware of the ones that you no longer want, and then we're creating a clear intention to create those new synaptic connections. And once we kind of know what we no longer want, we create that target. Then, and I teach through the program all kinds of things. We talk about living in stress versus creation, how the brain works, and then what types of brainwave states we want to get into when we move into meditation, just so that people understand that we actually have the hardware and we were actually designed to move move out of these undesirable thoughts and feelings and states of being. So anyway, we do journaling. And so part of the journaling is you write down what you're thinking when you wake up in the morning. And then you write down what you no longer want to think. And then you write down what you do want to think. And then you go into meditation. So when those negative thoughts might pass by you in your meditation, you're aware of them. So then you know that you're going to replace them. So it's really designed so that we make the unconscious conscious, so that some of those negative thoughts, you'll get so sick of them, you'll never let one slip by you. And I'm catching, and we are all works in progress. I mean, I still, catch myself, with an old habit or an old behavior. I mean, even just yesterday, I had a money conversation with my husband, and he got a little testy. And, my first thing was to go into my old behavior, which was to clam up, somebody that clammed up and, sort of nodded and smiled and was just and just wouldn't say anything. And I believe that's what ultimately led to my eye disease, right? Is that I just, I clammed up my whole life. So I caught myself and I'm like, I'm not going to do my old clamming up. And I'm going to say, and I just told them what I thought and, how we hopefully could manage through this. So as opposed to clamming up. So it was a big moment for me because it was uncomfortable.
So
And
let me ask, how long have you been working with this kind of process for yourself with, Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and the idea of recognizing the negative thoughts and then reprogramming your mind to go into positive? How long have you been actively using that process?
So I started learning that process around 2017, 2018. And then I became one of his trainers in 2020. And
you still haven't gotten perfect. You still have some negative thoughts, right? You're still undoing the patterns.
Because we are all works in progress.
That's right.
And that's the path.
And the point I want to make is that I got lucky, or fortunate as far as I'm concerned, and found a body of work that's very, very similar in 2004. And I've been working with it very actively since 2004. And I still get triggered. I still have negative thoughts come up. I still have old patterns that want to be expressed through me. And I'm just getting better and better in a process at catching it after it's happened or stopping it before I act from it. So just to validate and strengthen the message that it's not throwing a switch, it's traveling through life differently. It's learning a different set of skills and practicing them regularly as I get better and better at them.
And the regularly is really important, and I'll tell you why. So I was really doing this and regularly, and I do it regularly, but then I thought everything was going so well, and I thought I'm not going to do the journaling part anymore. I'm just going to go into meditation and maybe do shorter meditation or try something different. And about a month or so later, everything started not feeling as good, right? And things were sort of going not great. And I thought, what's changed? I was I stopped doing the work. I mean, in the consistent, intentional way. And that I think is another really great message, is that a lot of people think eureka, I'm done. It's not. It's and you could, and please don't test it. Please just do it. Don't stop.
Well, or go ahead and stop if you want, but
Right.
just observe what are the results you get when you're doing this versus that.
And there's no judgment in, in stopping and starting and stopping and starting. It's just and that's the process of creating a new habit as well, right? It's just and recognizing the benefit that it produces. I mean, I think there's some statistics, I think maybe it was Malcolm Gladwell, it's takes 10,000 hours, right? Or something like that to create a real solid habit. And I think what they did was they studied either, concert, pianists and also athletes, and the professional athletes and, high level, musicians have over 10,000 hours of practice under their belt. And that's why they can show up and perform at that level. So even for us in wanting to master ourselves, our thoughts, we have to practice. We have to put in the time. There's no easy way around.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. The Malcolm Gladwell thing isn't, when you talk to him, it's not a hard and fast thing, but it's the idea that he says, he was trying to study, how do we get people who are such high performers? They seem to go above and beyond. And he looked at things like the groups of the Beatles and Wayne Gretzky and some other people that just, are far and away better at their field or have accomplished more in terms of finances or whatever. And he said, well, these factors have emerged when you study these people. And one of them is they've got a minimum or, some above average skill in that area. They were fortunate enough to have opportunities presented to them. They took advantage of those opportunities, right? They stepped into the unknown and they took advantage of the opportunities. And then they just kept working at it until they'd amassed that 10,000 hours. So that's why I like to interview people like you. If you've gotten a lot of results from Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, I was recently going through his book, You Are the Placebo. And if you've stepped into this and taken his training and learned some techniques that are now helping you and others, in this conversation, you might say some things that spark some people that wouldn't normally step into a practice like this to give it a try.
Right.
So aside from the journaling and meditation, what other tools do you use with people?
Breath work. And I teach simple breath work, but personally, I've jumped into, kind of like the deep end of the pool, so to speak. I'm a really big Wim Hof person. I love the Wim Hof breathing and cold immersion. So I don't teach that, but
you use it to great advantage in your life, right?
And I recommend it, right? Like it's very amazing at regulating, right? Self-regulating. It's really, the breath work itself is the most powerful meditation I've ever done. And just so that listeners know that it's a lot of in and out breathing, but then you do a breath hold retention, and that's where the kind of the power comes in, and it activates your pineal gland, and you really get to a place where of surrender. And in that place is where I think is where all the unlimited possibilities exist, right? It's where in the unknown, and then you just feel amazing. And the cold exposure is the fastest way to train your mind. I mean, you basically, go in and, in the first 15 seconds, you basically think you're going to die. And then regulate your breathing, and then you settle in, and you basically, you are in that, the adrenaline is flowing through your body, but it's the good adrenaline. It's not the, adrenaline that we create from stressful thought. And then it does all these other amazing things physiologically. So you once you do that, you feel like you can conquer the world. And there's all these amazing happy chemicals coursing through your body once you get out. And so I definitely recommend that. And I do little mini retreats at my home in the Berkshires. I live in Berkshires in Western Massachusetts, and we have a wood-fired hot tub that we occasionally turn into an ice tub. So we'll do a Wim Hof guided breath work and take people in there sometimes if they're willing. And but breath but you don't have to go extreme. Simple breath work works. I'm also heart math certified neurochange solutions consultant. So we spin the heart math tools into when I teach the Dr. Joe Dispenza work. And there's a really simple breath called the heart lock-in technique. You probably know of that. And I mean, it's so simple you can't imagine that it would work, but it does. And is as simple as you start breathing deeply into your heart, and just in and out slowly, and then you connect with a regenerative feeling like gratitude or compassion. And as you're breathing in and breathing out, and then you take that regenerative feeling and you radiate it out, and you radiate it back into yourself. And I think it's the back to yourself part that when I teach that, it has like, people are like, whoa, I never take it back in. And that's the love yourself first part, right? Of my love, eat, heal. It's like, we always forget ourselves. Like, we always forget to kind of bring that love and that compassion and that gratitude back into ourselves. But just some a simple breath like that will regulate your, heart rate variability, will go into coherence, and, ultimately that, regulates your nervous system.
As you say that, it reminds me of the Tonglen practice of the Buddhist teachings, where you visualize that you're pulling in the suffering from whoever, whatever, and you're breathing out the loving energy, but you can't breathe it out unless you have it first, right? So it's this give and take process that you're talking about. And of course, the heart math, as powerful as it is, it couldn't be a whole lot more simple, right?
Yeah.
And if I visualize that when I'm breathing in through my heart. When I'm visualizing that loving energy, I visualize that I'm breathing it out through my heart. It's a breath, right? But if I'm visualizing, as you were talking about earlier, the power of your thoughts to shift the energy, especially within your own mind-body energy system, they've tapped into some wonderful stuff there.
Yeah. I mean, we are living in incredible times, I believe. The world of allopathic medicine, is its thing, right? And God bless it, right? You have an accident, the hospitals are there, and there's beautiful, skilled doctors out there, really passionate about, what they're doing. But we also have all of these other modalities, right? So we don't have to have or, we could have and.
Yeah. And we have all of these kind of kinks or glitches in the system where we've got all these pollutants and all of this lack of nutrition in the food that most people ingest. And so a broader range of solutions is really useful to address these things, because, as you say, the allopathic medicine is phenomenal for physical crisis. It is miserable for chronic illness. And
I can vouch.
Right. And most of the chronic illness that we experience and watch other people go through is not from a car accident, right? It's from lifestyle, and those changes in lifestyle, the use of the mind energy, the use of the breath, paying attention to, as you said, what we take in, what we eat, whether it's what we're eating through our auditory channels or our thought process or through our, digesting things physically like food and water, all of that stuff can be just shifted a little here and there in ways that produce tremendous results, because your body, your mind-body energy system, actually wants to thrive.
Exactly. And we're built to thrive, right? But we haven't been taught that, right? We haven't been really taught that this machine, right? This magnificent thing that we were born into has so much intelligence, and we take it for granted. I mean, we take the heartbeat, the digestion, the breath, that's just automatic, right? And we take that for granted, that, we're like, oh, out there is so much smarter. No, in here is so much smarter. And that's, I think, my journey has taught me, and really truly the answer lies within. And another one of the tool that I got certified in was teaching a certain style of Qigong called Dragon's Way Qigong, which was designed by Grandmaster Lu out of New York City. And I actually found his work way before I actually, got sick. But, I reflect on it, because at the time, the program was designed to help people with using these 10 moves to help people lose weight. And I wasn't overweight, but I wanted to lose a little, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to try this, and it was fantastic, right? I was just but I didn't really, and I read the book a few times, and it really had these beautiful, wise perspectives on the 5-element consciousness framework, but I wasn't ready for the deeper lessons at that time. And then I circled back to it as when I'm, as part of my healing journey. And, and I think it's some of the blessings of COVID were I would never have gone to Manhattan to take any of his classes. It was just, and everybody was throwing their classes on Zoom. And so all of a sudden I got to take, Grandmaster Lu's program, and I was really just so intrigued by the meridians, and I have acupuncture, but then you go and you're just there as the patient, and you're having somebody stick needles in you to open up your energy paths. But when you are in tune with your own energy paths, right? And that you're learning where those energy paths are, and and they are invisible, and that there are no accidents. You have an ache or pain, that there's an energy block. And when we do some of the work, it will, I broke my ankle. Here's a really great example in 2012. And, Western medicine, you look at the X-ray, it's better. But, I started doing the Qigong and my ankle hurt. And I was like, what the heck? And, I asked Grandmaster Lou, I said, what's going on? And he said, well, that's because it healed at a superficial level. And, what Qigong does is it heals at a deep energetic level. And so, there's this whole concept of the quantum field and energy, and that we are energy beings, right? So I love this time. I mean, like quantum physics and, the science is catching up to the spirituality. I think that, I think the Zen masters, the Buddhists, the Qigong masters, they knew all of this 5,000 years ago. They understood it. And now we have in modern day science, quantum physics, that's now, proving all of the works that these amazing masters knew for centuries. So I found that to be a really great marriage sometimes when I'm even just when I'm teaching Dr. Joe's work as well, because it's so great to bring different perspectives, because not everybody hears everything's the same way. And so I can bring in like this energetic perspective that I learned through Qigong. And I think that the magic in I think what a lot of us are doing is that, we're not relying on just one perspective to help our clients.
Exactly. And of course, years into doing therapy, people would ask me, well, if the stuff that you've learned is so good, why do you keep taking other trainings? And basically just what you said. Not everybody's going to hear or be drawn to one particular style of therapy or technique or breath work or energy field work. And so the more of these different perspectives I learn, and they're all talking about the same thing, right? But they're using a different mindset, a different set of parameters, a different set of jargon, a different template for looking at it or conceptualizing it. And one of those is going to resonate with the person on the left in the room and not with the person on the right, and vice versa. And if I present 5 or 6 options, different pathways to the same result, I increase the probability that whoever my audience is going to be able to find one that they're comfortable with. And that's what I tell people, it's even when you're choosing a therapist, you need 2 things at a bare minimum to have a therapy or a therapist that works. A therapist that knows what he or she is doing, and someone with whom you're comfortable. Well, I can have the most powerful technique that I've ever discovered for doing therapy, and I present it to somebody who's not comfortable with it. It's not going to help them. They won't even come to me long enough or engage the practice enough or be open while they're engaging it enough that it can actually have benefit for them. Because as you were talking about earlier, the power of the mind is there to heal or to keep me stuck, right? And that's what you were talking about. If I'm not aware of how that, what Guy Finley would call the mechanical level of mind that just keeps churning. And it's churning when I'm asleep at night. It gets churning when I wake up in the morning, and I'm not even aware of it. If it's churning at negative thoughts and helplessness and hopelessness and victim mentality, I perpetuate that experience in my life. And if I change it, I have new opportunities, new possibilities.
Powerful work. And I think it's such a great time to be alive because we have access to all of this. Like, and look, I mean, look at your podcasting, right? You're reaching, people who knows who's listening to it, right? Like, and touching lives and sparking interest. And then there's all these great practitioners and scientists and thinkers that are, looking to really just create a better world for ourselves, a better planet, a better life, right? Like living the best versions of ourselves, right? And I think that concept, like here, the United States, like we're the land, like the land of opportunity, but we're founded by the Puritans, right? So like, so there's still like even that ethos, like that it's in the zeitgeist, right?
Exactly.
So, and that's the unconscious, right? That where you like those little thoughts might slip in where it's like, well, but I can't have too much, right? Because that would be like greedy or something. And it's just like shift it. Like we live in an abundant universe. There's like more than enough for everybody. And if we could teach that, the whole planet would be, dancing. And what we need to do is just one by one or group by group, just shift that consciousness ever so slightly. And I believe that's the goal. That's the objective. Like, because that those negative emotions carry a low vibration, and we're all energy. We're 99.9999% energy. So if we could shift the lower vibration to a higher vibration, go from sad to happy, then raising, I don't know what the factor is, but I think there's some statistics that like the higher frequencies have a bigger impact on the world than the lower ones ultimately.
Right.
And that's why we're still actually haven't blown ourselves up because
Right.
thank God.
And the idea is that because there's a power in our thoughts, if I'm not paying attention to the negative ones, if I take my fingernail and drag it over the back of my wrist here on skin, I can do that if I have an itch. I can do that 10, 15, 20 times a day, no problem. But it's doing something. It's changing a sensation. And if I do it, and most of us who've worked with people have seen people who have obsessive compulsive problem patterns, and they do this relatively harmless thing thousands of times until there's a wound. Well, think of the same harmless negative thought that I wake up with. And I don't do the journaling and I don't say, hey, I don't really prefer that thought. I would prefer this one and let me create this. If I don't do that, this is what you're tapping into, the consequences, the damage that we do to ourselves when we blindly walk through life perpetuating the negativity that we've been conditioned into.
Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
So just that much, right? Even if you don't add the breath work and the energy
Right.
and that you're going, even if you can just identify the negative thought patterns and then choose something more positive, you get a big benefit right there.
Absolutely. And then choose to do that. Like doing it once is not like going to solve it though.
Just like scratching myself once isn't going to cause a wound.
Right.
Well, shifting over to the positive thoughts once isn't going to dismantle that pattern either. But it is possible to dismantle that pattern. It is possible to use that power of thought in a positive, healing, growth, expansive direction. Yeah. And I need to choose to do that.
And, one of the reasons why meditation is really great to help us do that is because we get into the operating system. And if we kind of get in there in the right way, it helps us produce the results potentially faster. And that's the power of meditation, right? And it's understanding that you want to get because when you're in that stress, those negative hormones, those negative thoughts, those negative emotions, like you're in high beta, right? And that is, you cannot have a successful meditation in high beta. And so what what I teach is just even simply what the brainwave states are and where you want to get. You have to get yourself, and a lot of times breath is what gets you there the fastest into, an alpha brainwave state, which is a much more coherent brainwave state and where we're more suggestible. And I guess the easiest way to explain to somebody how they already in it often is, back when infomercials first came on, they were only on late at night. And you know why, right? Because, television is sort of puts people in a trance. And then late at night, it was when you're starting to come out of beta and going, moving towards sleep. And so you get into that, they know that you're in that suggestible zone between alpha and theta. And that's when they're trying to sell you all that stuff. So we all have been in that zone. We know how to get there. And, but we get there consciously, sit ourselves down and we quiet our brain and our thoughts and we
learn to voluntarily bring about that shift, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I just, looked at the clock and realized we're pushing a limit here. So let me ask you to just take a breath and get centered and think about what's an aspect of what you do or you find most helpful for yourself or others that I either haven't asked you about yet or that you want to go back and highlight.
We really covered the gamut, and what I'd like to really just remind myself every day is to start with what is my intention for today. And I didn't really speak that. I kind of talked around it, but I literally every single day do not get up from my journal or my meditation without writing down what my intention was for today. And I even had my intention for our interview. And because I wanted to come, I wanted to come here. I wanted to really be fluid with what I was speaking. I wanted to just enjoy myself, and that I'm hoping that's what's shown up. And so when we don't let our life just happen, we show up with intention. And so also that intention, I always marry it to an elevated emotion, and the elevated emotion I want to have is joy and happiness. And that's what sets the tone of every day. And I didn't really touch upon that, but I would highly recommend if you do nothing just, even if you're going into a meeting and, like your old self would be like, that person's always a jerk, right? Like stop that and just go, I'm going into this meeting and it's going to have an amazing outcome. And just watch how your life changes, because your energy will change when you go into that meeting, and that person may actually show up as a different person because your energy is different.
Simply by choosing an intention and then within yourself pairing that with one of the more positive emotions.
Yeah.
And let yourself breathe into it and feel it before you step into the day.
Yes.
Or the next activity.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story. And if people wanted to find out more about the work you do, where can they reach you?
The best place is my website, which is www.loveeatheal.com. And I also welcome you to just email me directly, which is Carole with an E, Carole at loveeatheal.com.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to following your work.
Oh, and it was an honor to participate on your podcast, and I am grateful for what you're doing. So thank you.
You're welcome. Blessings. Carole Murko is a master of change. Her path from Wall Street analyst to NPR and PBS cooking host, and now to a mindset expert and health and self-mastery coach, is what drives her passion to help others make changes in their own lives and enable them to master their own thoughts and become the best version of themselves. Carole's hallmark program is Dr. Joe Dispenza's neuroscience-based change program, titled Change Your Mind, Create New Results. She teaches this within corporations, to corporate leaders and their teams, to entrepreneurs, individuals, one-on-one, and retreat-style groups. In addition, she coaches women on healing journeys. The program is designed to create a fundamental understanding of how your brain and body work so you can begin to master your thoughts to create your future. To master yourself, in her humble opinion, Carole says, it is mind-blowingly effective when participants practice the tools and experience the transformation that changes their lives, either their lives, their organization, or their health. Carole is also a Dragon's Way Qigong instructor and certified integrative nutrition health coach.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.